Hi, Joel.
Okay. Hi, I'm Joel Davel. I guess I'm going to show you a few things about the 208C that are new. They're different from the 208. It's extremely loud here at NAMM, but I assume that you can hear me better than I can hear myself. And hopefully I can hear the synth as well as you can hear it. There's a few new things. You've probably seen some things online. I've described some of the newer things. I'll go over some of that again, but it's pretty much the easel in that it does the same things. I'll start out with one of the different things. Is you have a dedicated switch for this rather than the toggle, which is a little more intuitive. It means you can stop, and then you can start it at sort of when you're ready. The other one was very awkward to start it instantly. That's not a big deal, but it's kind of nice. The other thing that we added here is now it's doing is a way to get directly to this through the sequencer, where you can trim this so that it's not so extreme. Yet you also still have the keyboard inputs that could go here if the keyboard's on, or if pressure's on. Now, if I turn that off, and we go here, stop that. I also have the keyboard, of course. Whoop, put that on. Let's see, let's get that on a keyboard. So it's the same thing. So that's being controlled by the pulser, which can be either transient or sustained. Previously, it had to be one or the other. Now it can be sustained or it can be transient. So you can be really short. Especially if you're using the low-pass gate like this. Or sustained. There's another difference here. A few other things. Let's see. Well, we've changed the way it looks on the panel. It actually refers a little bit more to the original easel in that some of the things, for inexplicably to some extent, were altered in the 2013 version. Besides the fact that, well, let me get started with let me leave off with where I still am. And that is, all of a sudden I'm not using a 218 keyboard. So now I'm using this keyboard. And this is actually being hosted as an option. Especially when we worked with something like the Stencil Morph, which we developed an overlay with them, we thought it would be nice if you could host MIDI directly. So MIDI can come from this directly from the 5-pin DIN. There's a MIDI out there. And also, actually, like this has Euro outs. This also has a couple of 1 volt per octave in and a gate in, and that gate will become a pulse, a Buchla pulse, which is different than, a Buchla pulse is both a gate and a trigger in one. So we thought that might be nice to add to this housing. But since you have this host option, we'll go directly to the host. It's just like playing it with a standard MIDI. Of course, it has USB MIDI as well, input. So these are all inputs here, and these are the outputs. There's some more logic that I like that's different to this than there was in the 208. The original 208 had its signal outputs here.
Did you work with on the original 208?
Did I work on the original?
Did you work on the original?
I did all the PCB layout on the 2013 version.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, obviously I didn't work on it in 1974. I was quite young at the time. And, but I did, I worked with Don directly on turning the 1974 schematics into the 2013 version. And there was a certain point where Don left it off, where I think we should have continued to refine it. In a way, what I've done is I continued that work that we were doing and allowed myself to change the faceplate from what was there in 1974 for a few reasons. One is we wanted to make it so that somebody could put it in their modular and they could get the direct outputs out of the oscillators, which you can now do. So these are direct outputs of these two oscillators. The original easel only had 2 audio outputs. That's one nice thing. Another nice thing, although we don't have a cable, I could probably steal one, is look at this. It might work. This is a little bit different style audio jack, but the original had no FM input. Had the original modulation oscillator on the 1974 easel didn't go high range. The 2013 version did, but now I added also FM input. So this anyway, you can get it to do some kind of strange things with FM input from, you can actually, so you're cross-modulating here. So that was kind of a nice thing to be able to do. So you can put FM into that. You can do some, you can go directly into this gate through here. So when I plug anything into this gate, it disconnects the complex oscillator, and you can plug in whatever you want. I also added noise. So I hated when things you have switches that don't do anything. And on the previous one, when you switched up to the preamp, unless you had something you were plugged into, it didn't have any source. So I decided to put the noise source in. It's the same circuit we used in the 266. So now if we listen to that, so there's...
So when you use the aux in, that kind of bypasses the noise?
Exactly.
Okay.
So once you plug into that, the noise is gone, and you have whatever you want to preamp with. You could put you could put the modulation oscillator into it, but that would be the same. But if I unplug it, now it's noise, which can be nice if you get this into a self mode. And you can get, of course, the VCA or the LP, or some combination. So I thought it was nice to have a noise source. And of course, if you want, you have the gate 2 signal out directly, so you could have the noise source and send it somewhere else. For modular purposes, that could be nice. So you don't have to have it come out the master, you can just turn it down there. And even though it'll be coming out when I'm going, you'll hear it out the gate 2 output. Of course, you don't hear it now, but so this output is pre-mix. So that allows you to take this independently out of the gate, and then if you want to get out of the gate, out of gate 1, you'll come out the master. That's a couple of the things that are different. Let's see what else. Of course, there's a more logical layout up here that I think is more intuitive than the original. Besides these additional outputs and inputs that I've described, the mod oscillator output used to come over from way over here, which I think was just because it was an afterthought. But right now it's integrated more with where it comes from, this part. I also colored it green to distinguish it from the sequencer, which before it was blue, and it was a little confusing because blue is right here and it kind of looks like it would be the mod os. It's just a little nicer to actually complete the idea of colors associated with their function. So the banana jacks are all associated with the color of the faders. By doing that with the mod oscillator section, I think it's actually more cohesive than it was before. So that's more logical. And finally, the master out comes here because all the mix is out here. It's mixed here, it should come out here as opposed to way over there. So those are some of the cosmetic things. But like I said, more inputs and outputs, but essentially the same circuit. It's so much the same circuit. Well, There's a few additional fixes that I won't necessarily get into, but it's still an analog module. So it's completely, all of the sequencing, all of the pulse generation, the envelopes, those are all still done either with logic or some sort of analog process. You know, it's not, there's no CPUs in here, there's no digital processing whatsoever. The only digital element is if we're hosting it, we are hosting it, of course, with some digital interface. And there's a MIDI card in this unit that takes the DIN input, which is of course digital, and turns that into the CVs. So, but that can be unplugged. If somebody wanted a pure analog system, if they just were in love with, let's get this going. If they just wanted let it run on its own. So this is like your computer. If you want to interface it with something else other than what was originally part of the easel, of course, the 218 keyboard. And that was great because it was a touch-sensitive surface. But there's more controllers out there that can do more things. So to bring the price point down and to give you those other options, it actually made sense to add these other things. So here's what I'm getting at. I actually made it better than it was before while we made it cheaper. And that to me is the goal, is to try to keep what it was before, not take away anything before we bring it down in price. A lot of people will take things out in order to make it cheaper. Well, what can we get rid of? Well, I decided what can we add first and make it cheaper. And I think we've accomplished that. So there you go. There's another thing that is possible now is to make it modular. I added these inputs and outputs, but the previous easel wouldn't fit depth-wise into a 200E boat. It was too deep. So it had its own case. So this one now, even though it still has this original spring reverb, it still has an analog spring reverb, the depth will fit in a 200E case. So, and if you were adventurous, you could even strum the springs of the reverb if you wanted. Nonetheless, that's some of the things. So otherwise, a lot of the things work the same way. If you're using with MIDI, you can change the timbre. Let's see, get this going. I can do that with the.
Excellent, Joel. Thank you very much.
Is that sort of? I probably missed some things I changed, but I hope that covers most of the things I see in front of me. Oh, and there's a couple of things, lights, whatever. Anyway, I ramble about these things, but I spend a lot of time in at the board level trying to give you options, trying to make it both a beautiful layout and repurpose a few things. And I hope it succeeds and it's enjoyable for people to play. That's all I can say.
Excellent, Joel. Thank you very much.